All right, y'all. So welcome back to some more conspiracy theories and unexplained mysteries of the world. But before we dive into all of the craziness that's out there, all right, we need to unplug some more people out of the matrix. All right. So you do that by hitting the like button and putting hashtag unplugged in the comment section. That's it. And if you're new, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, join the family. Now for the craziness. Let's go.
Who made billions out of creating super clunky corporate software. What you didn't realize is that Bill Gates doesn't think of himself that way. Bill Gates doesn't think of himself as some guy who got super rich making bad software. Bill Gates thinks of himself as God, in control of the solar system. And that's why Bill Gates is now backing something called sun-dimming technology that would reflect sunlight out of the Earth's atmosphere, causing global cooling. Ooh, that's not fraught with risks.
Ooh.
You thought gain-of-function research on pathogens was dangerous. Try that. But that doesn't stop Harvard University. Its scientists are testing that technology by spewing calcium carbonate dust into the atmosphere.
Bill Gates is backing the first high-altitude experiment of one radical climate change solution, creating a massive...
Did any of y'all know these experiments were taking place? I didn't think so. If you did, you're one of the lucky ones that had known. But for me, I had no clue this was taking place, these experiments.
First high-altitude experiment of one radical climate change solution, creating a massive chemical cloud that could cool the Earth. It's called solar geoengineering, and it's highly controversial. It would look something like this. Thousands of planes would fly very high and use nozzles to inject millions of tons of light-reflecting particles into the stratosphere. It would create a thin chemical cloud of those particles around the whole planet, blocking some sunlight from reaching the surface. It would mimic a giant volcanic eruption, which we know cools the Earth.
Now, just to restate, Bill Gates is not God. Bill Gates is some kind of weird, socially awkward rich guy who lives in Seattle. He doesn't own the planet, but he's now changing the planet single-handedly. This is not just over his yard in Seattle. This is over your yard and our oceans and the whole planet. Now, according to Forbes, Frank Kutch, who's the project's top investigator, quote, does not know what the results might bring. Well, just experiment with the globe and find out what happens. It's cool, though. He's a billionaire. Michael Schellenberger is the author of Apocalypse Never, Why Environmental Alarmism Hurts Us All, which it does, as our rivers and oceans get dirtier and no one notices. Michael, it's great to see you tonight.
Thanks for having me, Tucker.
It's a little alarming to think that someone as myopic and out of touch and totally ideological and weird as Bill Gates thinks he's in charge of the planet. What should we be worried about here?
I mean, basically everything. I mean, when I first heard about this over 2 decades ago, this was a thought experiment. But this is real. They're really trying to do this. They've encountered opposition every step of the way. I've co-authored articles with the Harvard investigator. We've told him personally this is a terrible idea. The vast majority of scientists disagree with this. You have to remember what they're proposing to do is identical to what we feared would occur after nuclear war in the 1980s, which is nuclear winter. The idea is that
or Yellowstone erupting. We've talked about this before. Yellowstone erupting could send us here. The problem with Gates doing this is, man, is always the things that they don't factor in going wrong. So what if you do this and it sends us into an ice age? You miscalculate something. They do something wrong while they're in the air. You know what I mean? And it's sent up. Then what? How do you reverse these effects?
Cool the planet deliberately. The effects on crops are completely unknown. They call this an experiment, but they know that there is no way to figure out what the large-scale planetary effects of this kind of thing would be. It's grossly irresponsible. They know for a fact that they will never get international agreement on this. So they're basically trying to socialize the idea, normalize the idea, make us comfortable with an idea that should make us extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah, a guy who cuts his hair with garden shears is now trying to control the solar system. The funny thing is, anyone who notices this, that maybe Bill Gates has outsized control over our lives, is immediately denounced by Snopes or one of these fraudulent fact-checking sites as a conspiracy nut. Do you think you're a conspiracy nut to have concerns about Bill Gates' hubris and ambitions?
No, I mean this is bonkers. I mean, honestly, there are very few people when you talk to them privately that think this is a good idea. There's a lot of people that are very scared to speak out publicly because Bill Gates' influence is extraordinary. He's a massive philanthropist. I think his intentions are very good. Nobody doubts he's well-intentioned, but good intentions can lead to some very bad things. The amount of hubris and arrogance involved here. We're talking about millions of farmers around the world who will be affected by this. How will they be consulted? What is the idea for how this is going to be governed? There is no plan for governance. There is no way to get agreement on this internationally. They know this. You know, Tucker, the thing is, the trends on climate change, most people don't realize they're going in the right direction. The United States has reduced its carbon emissions by more than any other country over the last 20 years. We've had an extraordinary success in the United States in reducing our air pollution. And now we're faced with the prospects of this radical experiment.
If there's one thing we can do to improve our country overnight, it's tax-exempt nonprofits. People like Bill Gates make billions. They die, but they continue to distort our society with these tax-exempt foundations. We should tax them immediately. Pay the rate we pay today. Michael, thank you. Great to see you.
Over the centuries, North America has played host to some truly unsettling, bizarre, and otherworldly tales, some of which seem too strange to be true. Tales of ghosts, cryptids, and aliens are rife across the land, with the United States alone claiming sightings of some of the world's most well-known and iconic cryptids. The Mothman of Point Pleasant, the Wendigo, the Crawlers, the Flatwoods Monster, and of course Bigfoot. The latter is the subject of today's video, where we'll be taking a deep dive into one of the most peculiar alleged sightings of the world-famous ape man. For this story, however, we'll need to travel north, beyond the realms of the USA's Pacific Northwest region, past even Canada. This story takes place in the remote tundra forests of Alaska and spans across many years. The tale takes place in Portlock, Alaska, once a bustling hub filled with people and buildings. You wouldn't recognize the town today for what it once was. A single cabin barely standing on the outskirts of the coal pine forests of Alaska's southern coast, in an eerily silent clearing. Officially founded in 1921 by the United States Post Office on Alaska's Kenai Peninsula, Portlock was initially established as a cannery for local fishermen to catch and prepare salmon for sale. By 1940, 31 residents had called the town home, according to a census.
Really?
This might not seem like much by today's standards, but life in Portlock was almost idyllic. A close-knit community, out in the fresh air of the wilds, must have been a pleasant break from 20th century city life in the USA. Fish were abundant in this relatively unexplored wilderness around the time people settled there, making this a land rife with opportunity and resources. Life was great in Portlock, for now. There are some inconsistencies with exactly when it happened, but it didn't take long for strange occurrences to set in. There are even reports of creepy happenings in the town before the United States Post Office opened the town. Reports claim that in 1905, the cannery workers prematurely left their jobs for the season due to something in the nearby woods that had been bothering them. Very little information persists as to what exactly was bothering them at the time, but all would become clear in future occurrences. The staff returned to work at the beginning of the next season, and production continued, but the strange sightings persisted. The true horror started in 1941. The area was rich in populations of Dall sheep, which proved reliable and relatively easy to hunt food sources for the town. Bears were also hunted, which proved to be more of a challenge.
Yeah.
In 1941, hunters from Portlock began to head into the woods towards the mountains, only to fail to return from their trips. Sometimes the townspeople would find the bodies. One tale reports an instance where the body of a missing hunter turned up several days after his disappearance, on the rocks adjacent to the nearby lagoon. The body was remarkable in the sense that it bore wounds that were completely different to anything the townsfolk had seen before. They were familiar with bear attacks, and this was certainly not one. There were no obvious claw marks on the hunter. He had been mutilated and mangled beyond recognition. There were few signs that whatever had killed the man had preyed upon him, and entire limbs had been rendered from his body, dismembered and scattered across the scene.
Just pretty much just dismantled him. Limbs just removed from the body.
Bodies shortly followed. Another showed up around the same time. This time it was the body of a local woodcutter, Andrew Hamlock, who had been found in the forests not too far from where he was working. He had been killed by a single blow to the head, and there were few signs of a struggle.
And then back then, you can't just pick up and move, so you got to deal with it, with whatever this thing is that's killing all these people. You got to deal with that. You can't just be like, all right, I'm moving. Like we do today. Something don't feel right. It's time for us to move, relocate. I wanted to live over there anyway. No, they had to stay and fight and face it.
Whoever had killed this man had either done it stealthily or extremely quickly with immense power. There were no signs that the woodcutter had been killed by a weapon. It seemed that sheer natural force had brought this man to his doom. Then the footprints were discovered. In an article with the Homer Tribune, a local Alaska newspaper covering the Portlock area, Melania Helen Cal, the area's oldest resident, told the story with conviction and confidence. Tales were told of villagers tracking moose over soft ground, she said. They would find giant, man-like tracks over 18 inches in length, closing upon those of the moose, the signs of a short struggle where the grass had been matted down. Then only the deep tracks of the man-like animal departing toward the high, fog-shrouded mountains. Melania is one of the many residents that eventually fled the town, settling instead in the nearby town of Nanwalek. Tom Larson, a fisherman, was the first to see the alleged creature. Reportedly, a huge, hairy monster was silently watching him from across the river as he fished. Making out the outline of the creature through the trees, a terrified Tom ran home to fetch his rifle, aiming to put a stop to the strange occurrences. But when he returned to search the area, there was no sign of such a creature.
Of course, gone.
The forest carried on, with the songs of birds and the gentle flowing of the creek. By this point, the townspeople were deeply unsettled, understandably. The notion that any one of them could meet a grisly fate at the hands of some unknown monster was bone-chilling, and people started to leave Portlock behind.
Whatever's out there, when you think about it, we need them on our side. You know what I'm saying? We need to figure out how to locate this elusive creature, whoever it is. Because if we have to go up against aliens or something like that, wouldn't it be good to have this elusive creature on our side? I'm just saying, that's just a thought that popped in. Random thoughts.
Some unknown monster was bone-chilling, and people started to leave Portlock behind to start new lives in an area where death was perhaps a little further away.
Well, maybe they could move.
By 1950, less than 10 years later, Portlock had been completely abandoned by the townspeople, who could take no more. Another chilling sighting was reported to the Homer Tribune in the same article, this time in an interview with an anonymous witness to the Portlock chaos. This sighting allegedly took place in the 70s, when the town was completely abandoned, and the witness and a friend were exploring the area. We beached our skiff and let the tide run her dry. After a dinner of salmon, we turned into our tent. Back in those days, the best tent I had was a dark green canvas job with a center pole and no windows or floor. We left the fire burning and cleaned the pots and pans as not to attract bears during the night and turned in, he reported. The two men were then awoken several hours later to the sounds of footsteps outside their tent. In August, there is still some light in the sky until about 10 or 11. I recall that we all were embarrassed about being afraid about the coming night. We had a flashlight and the rifle in the tent between us, locked and loaded. I finally dozed off, but woke right up when Dennis squeezed my leg. The illuminated hands of my watch showed it was 2:30. Joe was already sitting up and had the rifle in hand. I heard the first step, not more than about 10 feet from the back of the tent. Slowly, then another, and another. Whatever this was, it sounded like it was walking on 2 feet. It made the same semicircle around the tent.
Ooh.
When we finally got enough courage to crawl out of the tent and turn the flashlight on, we saw nothing. No tracks, nothing. The third night we decided if it bothered us again, we would come out the tent shooting. We were actually scared.
The third night? No. Wouldn't be no more nights, bro. That was it.
It never came back the third night, and the following day we had a break in the weather and got the heck out of there. Legends of a Bigfoot-like creature in the Portlock area are not new, nor were they when the town was initially settled. Sugston culture, prominent across the region, denotes a creature known as the Nantinak. Described as a large, hairy, ape-like humanoid, this creature is said to roam the wastes and wilds of Alaska's southern coast, and stories on what it actually is are diverse. Some say that the Nantinak is an undiscovered species of ape, whereas more traditional legends depict the creature as a man that has been transformed into a half-man, half-ape hybrid, wandering the wilderness in search of prey. What cryptid enthusiasts do seem to settle on, however, is that it was the Nantinak that was harassing the people of Portlock in the mid-1900s, perhaps forcing them out of its territory or protecting its forest. Perhaps another explanation might be that a prolific serial killer was on the loose in the region, terrorizing the town and claiming as many victims as they could, striking when people were alone and vulnerable in the cold Alaskan forests. Evidence is severely lacking, but perhaps one day time will tell.
Now, I know a lot of people be like, why do you still think that it's possible that maybe a Bigfoot or something could be alive and living and just be very elusive? Because we've watched several videos on caves, bro, and we have yet to be able to. Caves are like oceans. Only a small percentage of caves have been discovered, looked into, traveled deep into. So who's to say something's not living inside those caves and only coming out ever so often? Just think about it.
What's strange about the Portlock story is that it doesn't appear to be just the Nantinak that was kicking up terror in the townspeople in the 1930s and 40s. Melania Helen Call, in that same article with the Homer Tribune, denotes another eerie entity that was present across the Portlock region, specifically on the cliffs close to the lagoon where the first bodies showed up. A particular section of cliff was known to harbour what the townsfolk described as a spirit, taking on the form of a ghostly woman draped in a long black dress. Her pale face would glare down onto the townspeople from a ledge on the side of the cliff, at an area that was completely inaccessible to those without any equipment. Those who hung around to watch the woman for long enough say that when she had had enough, she would simply turn and disappear into the face of the cliff. It's hard to put an explanation to stories like this. Perhaps somebody did indeed find their way up to the tall cliffs without equipment, but the disappearing element of the tale really brings some eerie difficulty to the table. Who can say for certain what it was that was haunting the cliffs back then? Was it someone playing a prank, the result of terror-induced hallucinations? Was it a female Nantinak, the serial killer that had potentially been terrorizing the region? We may never know, but it must have been exceedingly frightening for those unlucky enough to witness it. When the town was abandoned in 1950, the townspeople took everything with them. Houses, for one reason or another, were torn down or ruined by either natural occurrences or by the creatures that were terrorizing the town. Many people moved on to settle in the nearby town of Nanwalek, where no sinister events similar to those in the Portlock tale have been reported. What remains of the once bustling town of Portlock today is a single cabin, a small wooden shack with a red painted roof. It stands lonely and dilapidated against the dramatic backdrop of the pine forests in the foreground, and the eerie cliffs where the spirit was sighted in the background. The lagoon where the body of the decapitated hunter showed up is a stone's throw from the cabin, and can even be seen on some of the photos. We'd recommend searching those photos up. To see the final remnants of a town where so many horrific things took place is unsettling to say the least. Dozens of people headed towards those woods, only to never return. Perhaps the Nantinak was even on the prowl when those photos were taken. Either way, the tale of Portlock serves as one of those fascinating tales where it would be amazing to know the real truth. Just what went on in those remote Alaskan forests in the mid-20th century. The truth sadly died with many of Portlock's unfortunate deceased residents, but maybe one day we will know the answer. What do you think happened?
Imagine a planet where every breath you take electrifies your body like a shot of espresso. The sky above you is an intense shade of blue, while colossal trees stretch towards the heavens, their vibrant green leaves growing at an astonishing rate. Daily exercise becomes a thrill like no other. With the abundance of oxygen, you become a supercharged version of yourself. Running feels effortless as you dart across the landscape, lifting weights that would normally seem impossible. It's as if the world itself is infused with a surge of energy. Everything is moving fast.
Now this video is what if Earth's oxygen levels rise to 50%?
Faster. The wildlife surrounding you is equally affected by this oxygen overload. Animals roam the land in majestic proportions. Their massive frames are propelled by speed and agility. Picture yourself in a pulse-pounding chase with an oxygen-charged cheetah, racing against a predator that could put a Ferrari to shame.
No thank you.
Now you may wonder how such a wild scenario could ever be possible. Well, let's see. Oxygen is the powerful fuel that keeps life going. It makes up about 21% of the air we breathe, and every breath we take delivers these tiny molecules to our cells, giving them the energy they need to thrive.
And if I'm not mistaken, the oxygen levels is one of the factors that caused the dinosaurs to be so huge, correct? If I'm not mistaken, I think I read that, I heard that, or saw that on a video.
Without oxygen, our cells would struggle, and our bodies would fall apart. But that's not all. Oxygen is a superstar that works for all kinds of living things, from tiny bacteria to giant elephants. It's even important underwater, where it enriches the oceans. Amazing creatures like plankton and algae produce lots of oxygen, creating a thriving underwater world. But to fully understand the impact of high oxygen levels on the planet, prepare for a journey back in time. Recently, scientists have made an astonishing discovery. They tested rocks from two different places that were really far apart. And can you believe it? These rocks held tiny pockets of gas that showed how oxygen levels shot up by almost a third in a very short time. It was like a breath of fresh air. So they studied these rocks and found that oxygen levels back then were much higher. Imagine lush landscapes, towering forests, and gigantic swamps that stretched as far as you could see. During the Carboniferous period, oxygen ruled the atmosphere at an impressive 20%, just like today. But over the next 50 million years, its levels shot up to a crazy 35%. Can you imagine what that did? As oxygen surged, something incredible happened. Huge forests grew all over the land, creating a breathtaking green world. And massive swamps took over low-lying areas, making the landscape look surreal and otherworldly. At the same time, carbon dioxide levels dropped. Normally, when things break down, microbes release carbon dioxide into the air.
Now, mind you, in the beginning of the video, we talked about them dimming the sun to cool the planet. Don't for 1 second think that they ain't thinking about also increasing the oxygen levels. I'm telling you, this stuff all ties in some kind of way.
This gas acts like a warm blanket, trapping the sun's heat and raising temperatures. But in the mysterious swamps where these giant plants were buried, the microbes couldn't do their job. The result? The planet got really cold. Who would have thought that a breath of fresh air could have such power? The scientists are still trying to figure out why this happened. But one thing is certain, it wasn't just happening in one place. It was a worldwide phenomenon. It was like the planet was playing a funny game with the climate. But let's go even earlier. We see the first North American dinosaurs making their grand entrance. High oxygen levels are what gave a big boost to the rise of mighty dinosaurs in North America and beyond. Picture tropics filled with the magnificent giant creatures. Obviously, dinosaurs didn't just appear out of nowhere. They took advantage of a changing environment that was perfect for their evolution. Oxygen levels played a huge part in this dinosaur party. As oxygen levels rose, so did the size of these incredible creatures. They started small with predators like Chindosaurus, and soon after, huge dinosaurs like sauropods took over the land. Then, 65 million years ago, dinosaurs disappeared and mammals took over. And here's the interesting part. Mammals never grew as big as dinosaurs. So what's the explanation for this? Mammals, and humans are mammals too, by the way, are special because we can regulate our body temperature. But that comes at a cost. We need a lot of energy to stay warm compared to reptiles and dinosaurs. Dinosaurs didn't bother with temperature control, so they could focus on growing big. The biggest dinosaurs were 10 times larger than the largest mammals. It's like a game of anything you can do, I can do 10 times bigger. Dinosaurs might have had similar limitations with their sizes, but those were much less strict. Before the dinosaurs' extinction, mammals were very small. Many mammal species disappeared along with the dinosaurs. But survivors took advantage of the open ecosystem and rapidly diversified into various body sizes. However, after 42 million years of growth, mammals reached a size plateau. This happened on all continents, most likely because of the temperature and land area. Colder environments allowed mammals to grow larger. Balancing body size and heat became challenging. Land area also played a role in sustaining big populations. But making animals bigger isn't the only thing high oxygen can do. This humble gas is a true jack of all trades. It also acts as our loyal bodyguard, protecting us from harmful UV rays and other dangers from space. Without oxygen, we would be defenseless against space threats.
You hear that? Another reason for them to try to raise the oxygen levels. I'm telling you, listen, man.
Oxygen also has a fascinating role in shaping the weather. It teams up with its other atmospheric buddies to make the sky go wild with tornadoes, hurricanes, and thunderstorms. They mix and mingle in the air, creating just the right conditions for these exciting weather adventures to happen. And these adventures can be dangerous, but they serve an important purpose. They help distribute nutrients and organic matter, carrying soil, leaves, and debris to new places. So what if we decided to mess with nature and crank up the oxygen levels to crazy heights, 30%, 40%, or even 50%? Well, too much of a good thing can become dangerous. Oxygen toxicity is when too much of this gas causes big problems.
Yep.
It's like eating loads of candy. It's fun at first, but soon enough you'll regret it. Surprisingly, an overdose of oxygen can leave you struggling for breath, like a tired dancer in desperate need of a break. At first you might feel a burst of energy, but it doesn't last. Dizziness sets in, as if you've been spinning on the dance floor for hours without stopping. In extreme cases, too much oxygen can even harm your body, making you feel like you've crashed into a huge truck. So while oxygen is always with us, giving us life, it's important to appreciate its delicate balance. Don't put on your special
My grandma used to say, too much of anything can harm you.
breathing gear. Also, we wouldn't be the only creatures to suffer from this oxygen extravaganza. Mammals, for example, will struggle to adapt to these extreme levels. The balance of power among species will change drastically, and winners and losers will fight for survival in a world that's spinning out of control. And we'll need stronger shelters to deal with these gigantic animals. We'll have to stay nimble and avoid danger. Amidst all the chaos, there will be astonishing adaptations. Birds will fly higher.
That dog look like he walking him, don't it? Exactly. That's where we could be headed.
Amidst all the chaos, there will be astonishing adaptations. Birds will fly higher than ever before, reaching heights that would amaze even the clouds. Also, get ready for more natural disasters and delicate ecosystems hanging in the balance. Fires will start quickly and rage fiercely, making wildfires a constant threat. Even a small spark from a campfire could cause disaster. We'll need to rethink our cooking and heating methods to stay safe in this oxygen-filled world. But let's not forget the other side of the oxygen story. If we had a planet with low oxygen, only around 15%, we would face a completely different struggle. Every breath would be difficult, leaving us tired and struggling for air. Physical activity would become extremely hard, and our memory and focus would suffer. So let's be grateful for the oxygen levels we have now. They're the perfect balance for us to thrive. In this exhilarating journey through an oxygen-rich world, we've experienced breathtaking wonders and discovered the delicate balance of our planet. Let's cherish the magic in every breath, respect the interplay of oxygen and life, and embrace the thrill of this remarkable ride called life.
Yeah, because in an instance, in a blink of an eye, things can change. And now we got to deal with a whole nother element that could destroy us or wipe us out, man. But it's just crazy to hear this stuff and think of how all this stuff is kind of tied in. You start to see the picture. And you start to see what they're thinking about doing before they even tell us. Telling y'all, man, we're going to keep unplugging more people out the Matrix for this type of stuff, bro. Y'all get at me in the comment section. Let me know what you think. Stick around and stay tuned. The next one I'm gone. Peace.